So anyone who lives in New Mexico knows the story about Smokey the Bear. I love this. That's why I'm so excited to talk to Tracy Danisic today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Smokey the Bear is having a big anniversary, right?
That's right. 80 years ago, the Ad Council and our partners at the National Association of State Foresters and the USDA Forest Service launched the first poster featuring Smokey Bear and his, iconic message asking Americans to take care and do their part in preventing unwanted forest fires. And that's still his message today. 80 years later, he's become really a pillar in the protection of our nation's wildlands and forests, and a part of American culture, right? He's been to outer space, he's been on postage stamps, he's met presidents, all really to connect Americans with this personal responsibility and this message that only you can prevent wildfires.
It's so funny because it is a core memory for all of us, I think, growing up. I mean, you'd watch Saturday morning cartoons and you would see Smokey Bear all the time. But I think a lot of people don't realize that he's a real guy. He's like a real bear. This isn't just a fairy tale.
Yeah, I think Smokey has really become in so many ways and through so many different stories and different channels a part of our he has this really historic and nostalgic legacy. And you're right that a big part of that story was that about 10 years after the PSAs launched, this little baby bear was found in your state in a forest fire, and the firefighters rescued him and nursed him back to health. And once he recovered, he spent the rest of his life at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., where he very quickly became the most popular exhibit at the zoo. And he was so popular, in fact, that he got like so much fan mail that they had to give him his own zip code. So
Oh
now Smokey Bear and the president are the only Americans who have their own zip code. And you can
my
still write to him today at that zip code 20252. But he also, of course, is connecting with Americans now, creating those same, personal stories and connections and memories with Americans across the country, but also, of course, on his social media channels, where we connect people with these tips and that, personal responsibility for protecting these beautiful wild spaces across the country. And of course, in really fun ways on his social channels as well.
You literally just gave me goosebumps talking about him. I think he's just so cute, and to know that it's real, it's just amazing. But, the sad truth of it is we still have these major fires. The California fire, of course, we just had one in Ruidoso not too long ago. What can we do? I mean, as much as we love Smokey Bear and, it's, fun to talk about, it's such a serious problem, and it
Yeah.
just baffles me that people still, to this day, don't understand.
Yeah, our hearts go out to the communities affected by the fires, and to, of course, our appreciation goes out to the men and women who are the professionals who are fighting these fires as well. And I think it really highlights for us again the urgency of this message. Today, 9 in 10 wildfires are started by humans. And so often those are accidental, these 9 in 10 fires are accidental fires caused by humans that can be avoided. And I think, ensuring that people are aware, and part of what our role with Smokey is to make sure that he remains fresh and modern and relevant, so that people recognize this is not just an issue from back then in the 50s or the 40s. This is an issue now that's important more than ever. And I think people recognize the increased urgency, and they want to do something, and they recognize that they can have an impact, but don't always know how. And the amazing thing about Smokey and his website, smokeybear.com, is that he really gives us all, everyone in our daily lives, whether we live near forests or wildlands or whether we recreate in them, these very simple ways that we can do something to truly make an impact on protecting our environment. It could be, things that you do around your house, ensuring that your machinery is up to date and uh, um, clean and not causing any sparks. Your tow chains aren't dragging and that they're secured properly from your trucks. Um, thinking about where you're parking your car and not parking and driving on tall, dry grass. And then of course, as we're recreating, how do we build and where do we build these campfires that we're using? How do we maintain them? And then of course, the depth of these tips about how to put them out, right? We think we just pour some water on it, but really, you really need to go to smokeybear.com and understand and recognize, it's about drowning it and then stirring it with a shovel, drowning it again, feeling it with the back of your hand. And if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. So I think many times it's getting new tips, but often it's really brushing up on the tips you think you might know and making sure that you're really doing that in a way that's going to have the impact it needs to.
And living in New Mexico, I wish people realized too that just because the fire's out doesn't mean all the destruction isn't over, because people don't understand about burn scars. And okay, you say, oh, it's raining now, so everything's fine. No, because once the fire starts, the trees are burning, there's no brush, and it causes flooding. And I think it's something I had to learn by living in New Mexico for as long as I have. But I don't think people realize. I feel like sometimes there's forest fires, they go out and we just forget about them. But we need to really keep in mind that people need our help even afterwards. And I wish, I don't know, I try to talk about it as much as I can on my radio show, but yeah, we have to get that message out as well.
Well, we appreciate that, and I think what's really amazing about Smokey is that through his message and when people use his tips and share his tips to help prevent these unwanted wildfires, Smokey Bear is within us all. So when you help spread these tips and help encourage Americans to think about, ways that they can help prevent these fires from starting, mostly things that people don't mean to do. These are accidents, but just reminding them that these can happen, then Smokey Bear is within us all.
I love that. So how are we celebrating Smokey?
Well, we're celebrating just that. We're celebrating this historic impact that Smokey's had, but also the nostalgic legacy that he's created over 8 decades. And the work itself features scenes shot in the style of those. We kind of take this trip back through the 50s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and really reflect and recognize that relationship that Smokey's created with generations of Americans. And we see people, like we were just talking about, sharing and using his tips, because when we practice fire safety, Smokey Bear is within us all. So these beautiful PSAs have launched and will be across the country for the year. And then we're also continuing the celebration on his social channels, where he has really fun ways that we can engage around his birthday and his, memories of Smokey. And we love when his friends and fans join in those conversations and share their tattoos or their collections of memorabilia. And then, of course, as is, part of his legacy and his tradition, Smokey will be making appearances at events across the country all year and asking Americans to join the party.
I love it. So what is his website again?
So smokeybear.com is where you can go to really explore his history and celebrate that part of his story, and then get a lot of wildfire prevention tips, really easy to use and digest and apply in your everyday life. And then smokeybearbirthday.org is a place where you can go to learn about events that are happening to celebrate.
I love it. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. Happy birthday, Smokey.
Yay.